All of our productions at GCTV are brought to you in part by The Arbors at Greenfield, assisted living community providing a unique balance of independence and personal care that offers residents and families the most precious gift of all, peace of mind. Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all the productions at Greenfield Community Television.
Hi, my name is Joe McCarthy. I'm here at GCTV in Greenfield, and they've been wonderful enough to let me hang a bunch of paintings in here for an opening today. This is June the 9th, and I have a bunch of oil paintings here today on canvas, and I paint in a lot of cadmiums, and I'm doing oil painting now. I say that because for 25 years in Franklin County, I had a ceramic tile mural business, which I don't really talk about, not that I'm embarrassed about that. And about 13 years ago, or even longer, I started oil painting. And I've always wanted a career in art, and the mural business was a way to do that, doing large ceramic mural. I had an incredible staff of people that I worked with, and they're still friends now. It's wonderful. But the oil paint just affords me the opportunity to do more individually fine-tuned work that truly comes from me, meaning the mural business I did commissioned work, which was fine, but it got me to where I am today. So a lot of young artists listening out there today, it's take all the art you can when you're young. I took interior design, I took bronze casting, I took a lot, drawing classes in the summer when I was 15. So take a lot of art, figure out how you can make a living even when you're trying to not work in the workforce yet, so that when you do get in the workforce and you have to work, that won't have to move away from art. So the tile business for me was a way, the mural business of a way for me to keep my hands in art and not spend 40 or 70 hours at another job, which I knew in my soul I just didn't want to do. Not afraid of work, I just wanted to do something in art. So that's the only takeaway. I think somebody here, Gary, asked me to talk about my career, so I'm touching on that. But you can find ways. I was talking with my friend Gary before the opening here. You can find ways to work in art while you're waiting to join the system. What I mean by that is at some point you're going to have to make weekly, monthly monies to have a roof over your head and health insurance and all that stuff that life forces upon us, which we need to do. But you can find ways. So when I was doing tile business, I have incredible peers that were talented artists. And what I was doing is putting art on tile and selling it, but people needed tile. So it wasn't like my great artwork. It was my artwork on tile and something they were going to put in their bathroom, or hospitals were going to put in a foyer, or murals and so forth. So there was a use. So I used to tell them, put your artwork on lampshades or sheets, or find a way to keep doing art so you can reach a point that that's all you're doing, and you're doing it your way. So there's ways to find it. And the journey, it's not always easy, because it's always about economics. Even if you're in a relationship, when you're younger, money's always an issue. If you can take care of that, or put it in its proper place, you can find ways to do art. Anyway, so I do that, and I do demos for something called the Fine Art Collective, which is a company, a global company that is Winsor Newton, and I go to colleges and retail stores, and I get my own gigs, and they pay us. There's 20 of us in the States. We just come back from London, where their headquarters are, and they train us. So I go and talk to students. I don't teach and I don't sell it. I just talk about the paint and what it does and answer questions, and I give them free samples. That's the best part about it. So I was lucky. That's a sidebar. So I make an income from that and selling my paintings now. And but it's been a good run since 1980. I've been doing art. I'd like to thank everybody for coming, and it's a nice day today, and thank you for having me, GCTV. Have a good night. Is that good?
Want some other stuff?
Yeah. Is that good?
Any questions?
Oh.
Well, I would love for you to talk a little bit about your paintings. Could you tell me what they mean to you, what moves you, what makes you paint what you paint?
Okay. What I do, I'm going to explain. It's hard to explain what it means to me, but I will in some way here. When I started painting any of these paintings in here, I don't really know what I'm painting per se. I didn't know that I was going to have these shapes in here and this drip here. So I put out 3 canvases. I have 3 easels. My tile business taught me that when you're preparing to produce something, if you get everything out, to prepare, that's 40–60% of the operation. You got to get your materials out. So once you're set up, you should do more than one. So it's this layover from the mural business of doing lots at a time. So I'd get 3 canvases, and I got 3 easels. I have a large studio. I'm very fortunate. And I put out a palette, what I'm going to use. And this is truly so far my lifelong palette. I leave it sometimes and I go to different colors, but I'm always going back to this. And at some points I say, oh, I shouldn't be doing just the yellow. And then your art brain goes, well, go ahead. So I've sort of I've let the paintings take me. So I don't worry about that my palette has been this way for quite a long time. I leave that for whatever, but I just start painting. Once I start painting, things start happening for me. This one, it was easy. It came. Some paintings come very easily to me, and some I work on and kill, and they're terrible, and I put them away and paint on them afterwards. So out of the 3, I'll get paintings that are really working, and I'll set one aside, and I'll keep painting on 2 and move back and forth. And with oil paint, it takes 6 months to a year for paint to dry, for the oil paint to truly dry. It dries through oxidation. The cadmiums take longer to dry than earth tones. So my cadmium paintings, I use a medium in it called liquid, and I add it to the paint, and it doesn't do nothing to the paint other than make it dry quicker, so that all the paintings that you've got, if you're painting 3 at a time and you have a studio and you're painting large, you end up with a lot of wet paintings. So I'm conscious of that. So how I work is I start painting, and eventually they start talking to me. And sometimes I paint early in the morning, and then I leave them. In the afternoon, sort of that leaves me that I've got a rhythm now. I paint early in the morning, 6 in the morning I get up at 5:30, but by 7 maybe I'm in the studio and I just start painting. Then once they start happening, I fine tune them. And sometimes I just sit with them, a little scary, and I just have a cup of tea and I just look at them, and then they get started, then they're happening, and then they're almost done. That's my favorite part. That's when I sit with them and I'll be sitting there and I'll realize, like in this painting here, for instance, that maybe it's going to look better if I put this color here. So I go like a madman, not thinking, and then eventually I start actually thinking about what it's doing. And you know, this space here, it needed that. The painting starts telling me what it needs. And that's the way I look at it, as cerebral, and Warhol, as that sounds in some degrees, but I do. I let the painting take me, so it's nice.
So how do you know when it's finished? Does it tell you?
Yeah, it does. I've done them. I've done large paintings. I have not a lot of them, and they just work right out of the gate. Half an hour, 40 minutes, done. Big paintings, done. And I put them away immediately, because I've learned in the past I would keep them out, rework them, and I take pictures with my cell phone in the process. So I'll be looking at paintings that I love immensely that I painted over, and they look like crap to me. You know, so I've learned, sometimes I get out of the gate, and then other times I'll sit there and I'll clean my brushes, and I'll be ready to leave the studio, and these are hanging. I have like these hooks, and I have high ceilings, so they're all hanging there. And just before I leave the studio to go back in the house, it's attached to my house, I'll see an area that needs something, or maybe needs a drawdown or a drip or something. And then I get out the brushes after I've cleaned them, because it's a process with oil paint, and I mix. I have my palette's already out because it takes forever to dry. So I'll go over and I'll add it, and I'll clean the brush again, and I'll sit down, and then it's finished. It's a tough. I've ruined. I think, and this is my own, because nobody knows, because it only happens with me in the studio, that I've really ruined a lot of good paintings by just continually painting once they were at that point. So I've learned that, and I have a wonderful wife, and she has an art degree, and she's a talented artist. She doesn't work in that, but she's really good. So I'll ask her to come into my studio and critique me, and she'll come in and she'll look at paintings, and she's more traditional, more like Vermeer and wonderful landscapes, and I'm more like, you know, Picasso or Van Gogh, very abstract, in your face colors. She'll say, this one's overworked, this one's not done, this one, I like this one. When I hear her say she likes one of my paintings, because I know where my wife's coming from, I'm pleased, because then I know that I've achieved something. And then there's times she'll come in and say, you know, this is overworked, or this is not working, it should be painted more. And I'll say, no, I'm not changing nothing. And then the other half of the time she'll leave, and I'll change the painting, or I'll add what she said in some degree. Maybe it needed some more work. So that's how I work. And I end up with a lot of paintings, and it's fun, and I want to keep doing this till I say this, everybody freaks out. I want to be, there's a picture, and I'll end with this, there's a picture of Picasso in my studio. Not that I consider myself Picasso, but there's a picture of him. You know, he's balding, he's got shorts on, no shirt, and he's turned like this, he's got a cigar in his mouth, and he's surrounded by ceramics and some paint. I want to end up like Picasso, talking to myself in my studio, painting. So I keep that picture up to remind me, that's my goal. And I'm getting there, you know, I'm getting there. So that's my goal. So be walking around my studio, talking to myself, and I don't smoke cigars in the studio. It's flammable, but afterwards, out in the, you know, by the fire, I'll smoke a cigar. So hopefully I've answered some of your questions. Yes.
I got two for you. They're easy ones.
Okay.
I've known you a long time, so
yes.
I can ask these kind of questions. I've watched you progress through a lot of different mediums.
Ah, that's right.
You did watercolors.
Yeah.
You did the tile work.
Yes.
You've always used a similar palette.
Yes.
Always.
No, you're right. You know what? You're right. And
why do you think you've moved into oil after all this time?
Yeah, Gary knows. I've worked a lot of watercolors and had watercolor shows, and I do acrylic, and then I'm working. I work in all the mediums, but I fell in love with oil. It's the jewel-like quality And the openness. In other words, you can keep working it. It doesn't dry immediately. And I think watercolor, I love using it, and I do some still, but I think it's one of the most toughest mediums to deal with. That isn't why I don't use it. I'm just basically in love with that jewel-like quality that you can get with oil paint. There's something about it for me, out of all the mediums. And there's not a lot of, even when I go to these colleges, not a lot of people work in it because of the toxin or the solvents and the odor you have to. I have a air vent that exchanges the air in my studio every 15 minutes, and so I take all these precautions, but you know, I take that, but I think so far I'm still working in oils. And you're right, you know, when somebody consciously says that to me, you're right, day one, you're right. My watercolors have this palette.
But this palette really matches your personality too.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that's maybe scary at times, because I think I call them in your face, so
No, I mean, you're a bright personality.
Well, thank you.
The other question is, what other artist inspired you to bring?
The heavyweights are, believe it or not, even, they don't show here, Andy Warhol, obviously Jackson Pollock, Van Gogh, recently, a woman named Emily Mason, who is married to Wolf Kahn, the watercolorist. They live 20 minutes up here in Brattleboro. They have been painting for over 50 years together. He's a well-established artist. Everybody knows Wolf Kahn, but not a lot of people know Emily Mason. So one of my paintings that are down there, it's called Emily's Colors. I found out, I knew they lived there. I found out that Emily Mason, who Emily Mason was, 15 years ago, I'm hanging a show in Brattleboro, and I'm hanging it at Candle in the Night. It's a rug company. And this woman came in, and I was up on a ladder hanging a painting, and a petite woman came in, and one of my paintings was leaning down, and I kind of nodded to her, and she left, and I come down off the ladder, and the owner, I can't think of Gary, comes in from, the owner comes to me and he says, that was Emily Mason. That woman had just come in here, and she says, that painting over here in the corner, it buckled. There was a buckle in it. She says, if you take water and put it behind the canvas, it'll re-stretch it and you won't see this buckle. And she was right, actually. So I said to her, well, who is she? And she says, it's Emily Mason. And he went back in and he had a book about this big, and he opened it up, and it was her work. I'm like an Emily Mason groupie. This woman's paintings are absolutely wonderful. And I love saying this. I think she's going to be one of the top 10 women, American women artists at some point. I mean, she's just that talented. I mean, she's established this isn't just my thinking. She's been, she's well established painting. Anyway, so I found out she's up there. And since I do these demos, I took oil paints and I went up to Larry Simmons, Candle in the Night. Larry says he knew her when he showed me the book. So 15 years later, I'm saying to myself, I was 18 when Warhol had the factory, but I didn't know who Warhol was. And I never went over there. It would have been nice just to go in and walk around. I said, I'm going to go up and I'm going to meet Emily Mason. Well, sure enough, I called Larry. I said, he says, look, we'll go at the farmer's market, we'll meet her. I'm going to cut to the chase. I spent many farmer's market in Brattleboro waiting for this woman to show up, and Larry was going to introduce me. One day he said, she's not here, let's go to her house. Went to her house, drive up. He calls her, she says, yeah, come. I had a book that she'd done, it's called The Fifth Dimension, her first book. She's come out with a second book, and I had that, and I wanted her to sign it. I became a groupie. So I went into her house in the kitchen, and Emily Mason comes out, and I meet her, and she's just really this neat lady, and talking, and signed the book. And I said, I have paints for you. I had some paints, and I have some oil bars. Oil bars is oil paint in a wax body, oil bars. And she says, oh, I don't use them. Maybe Wolf could. She calls Wolf Kahn in. So I have Wolf Kahn and Emily Mason in their kitchen. This is like somebody meeting, you know, the Pope, yes. Yeah, double Pope, because I went up to see Emily, and I know Wolfgang is mega famous. I got to go to her studio and his, so it made my day, and I got my book signed, and that woman really affected this painting. I mean, I don't even come close. She has such a touch and such a palette that's incredible. So this is the only painter that really directly, immediately, in the 2016, it affected me. The others are, you know, Gustav Klimt and all the other oldies but goodies. But and she's alive. And we went to an opening of hers in New York City at this gallery, the Finley Gallery on Fifth Avenue, or some it was a high end. And when we got there, she had sold 3 paintings of over $100,000. They were total was $100,000. I mean, paintings this size were $50,000, $60,000. So, and I got to see her. By this, she was, and she's a neat lady. So anyway, thank you for asking that, because she really affected me on some of these paintings that are in here today. It's funny you asked that, because you didn't know. I do have some paintings, and one's called The Beginning, and it's hanging over there. And yeah, so, and I label them on the back for my own head, E paint. There's an E, and I give it a name, like this is Dreams, but there's an E also with it, which means to me it's Emily Mason. I don't put her name down. So for me, it's a time. So I've always appreciated her work. So thanks. That's a great question, actually. Sorry.
No.
I know. I have a whole story with that. Like,
I gotta give him some stuff.
yeah.
In conjunction with that, you're part of the art community around here. Can you talk about how supportive the art community is in Franklin County?
I think it's since 1980. I've been a big part, or not a big part, but I was in the Chamber of Commerce. I've been the Shelburne Falls Business Association, the executive committee. I was on the CDC board when we only had $15,000 in the kitty.
The Franklin County Community Development Corporation?
Yes, there was only, and we had to hire a secretary, or what do they call it, administrative assistant back then. We had an assistant. It was the first one they had, and we had an interview. So I was on the executive board, and I was the treasurer. I was the treasurer of the CDC at one time. So that said, I've been involved in it from wacko artist side to what it takes to introduce yourself to the community and let them know that arts is important, and how do you get money out of a system, not just the private citizens. How do you get encouragement from things like this? This is great, GCTV, and all the institutions that have parts of them that are really focused on art. And this is one example, GCTV among one, and then there's other art with the theater groups. So a lot since 1980 has been happening, and it happens quite quietly. I've seen it happen quite quietly and sleepy. In other words, it was there in the 80s, but minimum. For instance, when we introduced ourselves to the Shelburne Falls Business Association, my partner and I, Jeffrey Cominance, we had hair down to here, and it was really important for us not to project these hippie artists just doing art. We were that, but we were also businessmen. I want to produce art to make money in a capitalist system. So knowing that, we would be promoters in the CDC for any kind of art that we could institute, or any kind of focus we could give that. So when we were out there in the CDC, and Jeffrey later became the PIC council member, private industry counselor, so we were in the community as sort of art businessmen, because we thought it was important to be a part of the community and let them know that we were a business, that we weren't just. Sometimes people look at the artist as, oh, we'll go see him on the show, and he'll do and do this, and they're a vital part of economics. Once you do that, once you talk to the business side of that, you become a reality. You do. If you're an artist, and they say, oh, you're an artist, but if you're an artist, and just briefly, when we did murals, ceramic murals, We painted them. They were art. We needed a loan. We were going to talk to a loan officer. I learned how to talk to that part that's important for artists, and that's the business community, or where incomes and money resources can come from. Instead of me going in and saying, yeah, we paint these groovy murals and they're colorful and we're artists, and I finally figured out what they wanted to hear, because I wasn't a businessman. I finally found out what they wanted, and I got it down, and we actually got loans. And how I would go in to talk to a banker would be, I'd sit down and I'd say, I boiled it down to this. We take $150 worth of ceramic tile. We take electric kilns, which are 1.5 cents per tile to fire. I knew all this. We take another $80 worth of glaze, and we take a couple of employees that are getting minimum wage, and we produce something that cost us $600, and we make $5,000. No, we use no moving parts. There is no machinery. We get 50% down. Now, I'm sounding real cocky. It took me a while. Once they hear that, you start talking that. So I know that's how I see the art community. I see that if you talk in their terms, and they were true terms, but I could have went in and said, isn't this cool? We do these big murals. It's a lot of fun and a lot of art. That's nice. We all get that. But they love hearing, if they're going to give you a $10,000 loan, that in 2 murals you're going to make 10 grand, and you actually, your output, and we could prove it, was $900. The math is, because what happened was we realized there was this, the other side of art is, smiling, there's this intangible thing. So when we did it, and I'm talking about artists in general, but when we did it, there was this intangible thing. I found that suits, business people didn't know how to deal with artists, because they dealt with lawyers, accountants, and so when they deal with us, or they deal with artists, I think it's a plus for us. So I think artists that deal in the business community or need to do a project with a group of kids, if you let go of you're just an artist, use it. Nobody wasn't, what's an artist supposed to be like? They know what a lawyer's supposed to be like. So I always used that. It was wonderful. It was a tool. So that said, but we were always promoters in the community. I bought local when I was a business. Any kind of material that I needed, I bought local. So I was very business conscious. So, and I think Greenfield is producing some great art, and Turner's. They've got these little studios also. That's great. And it's not just great. It's great for Greenfield. It's great for Turner's and Shelburne Falls. You get these art programs that are going. It can support art, and it does. I'd like to see it support a lot more artists. So anyway, and they get to pay taxes. I pay taxes. And you get to sort of say, when you sit on the CDC board, that we need more $5,000 grants in the CDC for startup artists. You get to, because you're legitimate, you've just legitimized yourself as a business, so they'll listen to you. So I think it's come a long way, and I'm not the only one. That's just the way I can only relate to the art in Greenfield, and it especially the new gallery that the Greenfield, can't say enough. The Greenfield gallery, a real gallery. What I mean by that is they're 100% into promoting gallery art, quality art, and they're framers. And they do their own, you can get chiclets, you can get reproductions on canvas. So that part in the community is absolutely wonderful. You get somebody spending the amount of money that they did on the building, and just the floor alone that they put in that. They didn't have to put a great groovy floor in there. It's marvelous what they did. And they're a class act. So it's nice to see those sorts of investments happening right here in Greenfield. Yeah, thank you.
All of our productions at GCTV are brought to you in part by The Arbors at Greenfield, assisted living community providing a unique balance of independence and personal care that offers residents and families the most precious gift of all, peace of mind. Bay State Health, providing the care you and your family need when you need it close to home. Visit them online at baystatehealth.org. Greenfield Savings Bank. Visit them at 400 Main Street in Greenfield. Call them at 774-3191 or go online to greenfieldsavings.com. The Hammond Family. The Hammond family are longtime supporters of Greenfield Community Television. New Fortune Chinese Restaurant on the Mohawk Trail in Greenfield. Visit them online at newfortunema.com. Call them at 772-0838 and check them out on Facebook. People's United Bank, located at 45 Federal Street in Greenfield. You can call them at 774-3713 or visit them online at peoples.com. Thank you to our sponsors for supporting all the productions at Greenfield Community Television.